Hi guys, thanks very much for joining me. I wanted to look at another study skill today, something that's particularly important when we're not learning in school, we're learning away from our normal environment, we haven't got the teachers or support staff around us that we're used to, so we need to develop some skills for ourselves. And I'm looking at taking notes today. So, taking notes, it's a key skill that we need to develop. It's one of these things where we might have to be able to write notes when we're listening to somebody talking to us. We may be watching a video, listening to a podcast, or reading another piece of information from a book. Now, what we're going to look at today is a way to structure our notes. Now, this is going to help us both in the note taking at the time and also when we revise later from those notes. The method we're going to use has a specific name. It's called Cornell Notes. Now, you don't need to remember that. You're not going to get tested on can you remember the name for note taking. What I do want you to remember is the method. How do we use this to help take notes? So first of all, I'm going to start with a blank piece of A4 paper in front of me. Now, you can start basically with any size of paper. So you can have a blank page in your exercise book, or a different size of paper, but I've got a blank piece of A4 paper to start off. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw 3 lines on the paper. Now I've got a line at the top, and I'm only leaving a little gap at the top. I've got a line going down, not quite the middle, it's over to the left hand side, and then I've got a line at the bottom, and that line at the bottom is leaving a bit of space for me to write in later. Now that's going to be the framework or template that I'm going to use every time I take notes using this method. Now, you can buy books with this ready printed, you can print them off the computer, but it is really easy to make them yourself, so you don't need to be spending money on special notebooks or special paper. Just do this every time you're going to use it. Now, the first thing you need to do at the top, you need to write the topic and the date. Topic, so you know what these notes are about. And the date is going to help you keep the notes in order. And also, as you're learning, you will think, well, I learned about this topic 2 weeks ago. And then we can just look and find them in date order. Really simple way, and really important you do that. Another tip I would add here as well, it can sometimes be useful to add your name at the top, or certainly your teacher's name at the top. So if you lose them, they will find their way back to you, hopefully. Now, in that main section in the middle, we're going to use that to write our notes, be that from when we're watching a video, listening to a discussion, or in class. Now, it's really important you remember this. These are your notes. So you're not writing everything out word for word. You're not copying out of the textbook. So you can write using abbreviations or bullet points. They've got to mean something to you. It's important that they're neat, and it's important that you can actually read what you've written, but they don't have to be full paragraphs. On the opposite side, in that narrow strip, we're going to write down the key ideas and key themes as we're taking our notes. Quite often, sometimes we'll say, you need to make a subheading. This is a perfect place for you to be putting things like that. So key ideas, key themes, are going to go into that little strip down on the left hand side. So that leaves us the piece at the bottom. Now that's where we're going to summarize our notes and summarize our learning. So once we've finished watching our video, or reading an article, or listening to a discussion, we're going to summarize what we've learned in that piece at the bottom. Now I understand you might need more than one page to do this. That's fine. But on the final page, use that summarize space just to summarize your notes and your learning. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to show you what this might look like. These notes are based on a history lesson, and it's about women in 1920s America. You can see there's a date, and then on the right hand side of the page we can see the key notes. We can see the notes that the student has written. They're not written in full paragraphs, sometimes they're not even complete sentences, but they allow that student to understand enough about that period. And on the left hand side, the students put the subheadings, the key topics so they know what each set of notes refers to. And the topic or the subheading is next to those relevant notes because it's really important they match each other on that piece of paper. And then finally, at the bottom of the page, we've got a very short summary of what that student has learnt from the lesson or from the article. So there it is, an example of note-taking using Cornell Notes. Now, even when you're given notes or a handout in class, you should still use this method, because by making your own notes, it first of all ensures you've read the handout, and it also ensures that you've added your own thoughts and comments. Any additional questions you might have from reading something or listening to something, you can add them into your notes to make sure that you ask your teacher or you do further research to understand something. Now, I just want to add one additional skill here. I want to look at how we would use note-taking when we use SQ3R. Now, SQ3R, it's a method when we're reading an article, and I've created a video which explains this method in a little bit more detail. So if you're not sure about it, go and have a look at that video and then come back to this one. But as a quick recap, it's skim, question, read, recall, review. So how would this note-taking page work when we're following this method? At the top of the page, we're going to write down the details of the source. So is it a website? Is it a book? Is it an article? So write down the title of that source and perhaps the author of it. We're going to skim the article next, but then we need to move on to the Q, the questions. And the questions you're going to add into the left-hand column. That thin column on the left-hand side, put the questions from the SQ3R. Now, once you've read your article, on the right-hand side, write your notes and try and recall the contents of the article and answering those questions. And then finally, a summary of everything you've learnt at the bottom. So this method works really well with SQ3R. However, it's also really useful for revision because we can fold the piece of paper over, so all we can see is that narrow column where we wrote our subheadings. And if we just look at those and see what we can remember about each topic, so for example here, what could this student remember about life before the 1920s for women? What could they remember about the 1920s? And then what could they remember about inequality in this period? So it's a really useful revision tool. Now you need to practice with it. It takes time to get used to it because it is learning a new method of note taking. So if you try it first time and you say it's too difficult, I don't like it, don't give up. Try it again. You may even have to adapt it. And don't be afraid to make changes or enhancements to the system. It's your system. They are your notes. So you've got to do what works for you. Now it's really important you keep these safe though. You're going to spend time making these. Don't waste that time by making the notes only to lose them later, only to leave them lying around to get crumpled on, for drinks to get spilt on and things like that. So really look after your notes. Be as proud of these as you would be of your other work. So that's it, note taking. As always, if you've got any questions, get in touch with one of your staff, drop us a line, but hopefully this is a new way for you to try and develop your note taking, which will help you later on when you're revising. Thanks very much. Bye bye.